Welcome to the Hank Cisco Show, ladies and gentlemen. Don't touch that remote. This is a great show today, and it brings back a lot of memories. My mother would be very proud of me today, helping a church fix up that's been there over 100 years. And when I was a little kid, I used to go, my mother would take me over to Valley Forge, then in the chapel, and beautiful, you know. And here it's over 100 years old, and it needs a little help now. Maybe the roof is leaking, maybe the windows are shaking a little bit, so we're going to have to fix it up a little bit. And that's what we're going to do. And just a little tip. My first trip to Italy, my mom told me, take some $1 bills, and every church you go, any new church you go into, you put $1 in the poor box, and you make a wish. So maybe now we're saying here, let's make a donation to the Washington Memorial and make a wish that everything will be beautiful. Do you remember what President Truman says? What's new? The history we haven't read. And the history is there, Valley Forge Memorial Chapel. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce my guests like they do in Madison Square Garden. In this corner, tell us who you are. Right.
Thank you, Hank. I'm Roy Alquist. I'm the priest in charge at Washington Memorial Chapel at the heart of Valley Forge National Historic Park. And the chapel is a congregation of the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania, but it's really a church for all people.
It's for all people.
For all people, and it's been there gathering people for special events, celebration of wonderful events in the history of our country, and just a great, glorious treasure that most people think is part of the national park. And the message we have to get out is that this is not part of the national park.
No.
Private property. It's a small congregation.
You have to gather your own money.
That's right. Struggling to keep this glorious building open.
Your money comes from heaven. Right?
Well,
it don't come from Harrisburg,
yeah.
Washington. Right?
But so does the rain and the wind come from heaven. And we have thousands of visitors to the chapel every week, tourists that pass through.
Beautiful.
And they all think it's the national park. They think their tax money's paying for
and
it.
You say, well, they're Protestant or Catholic. And I went over there, and I went in there in the daytime. It's beautiful. The light, the sun comes through the different glass windows. I forget what they call that. It's beautiful. And then there's a man there that helped guides, and I'm Italian. I'm a Catholic. Okay, I go there. So this guy's taking me around. I said, where are you from? He says, South Philly. Can you imagine that? So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say Washington is for all people. All people. Come on, my mom would be real proud that I'm helping to raise money. And we got to raise money, and it shouldn't be any problem. In fact, I thought of an idea. How about we put a big box? You know who I want to thank? The Patriotic Sons of America. They got me involved here. They told me about this, and they're helping out. Maybe I'll get them to build a box, put it outside, and put their drive-in donations. You don't have to stop in the church to do it because it's closed. The church is always open. The donation box is always open. Come on, let's go. All right, now tell me what your job's going to do.
Meet my friend here, Gardiner Pearson.
I'm mad now. Come on, let's go.
I'm Gardiner Pearson, and I'm the president of the Washington Memorial Heritage. And the Heritage is a nonprofit organization, 501c3, set up to raise money to preserve and restore the Washington Memorial Chapel. Now, the Washington Memorial Chapel is not just a church. The Washington Memorial Chapel was set up as a memorial to George Washington.
The first president
of the United States. But not just the first president. It's also a memorial and tribute to the Founding Fathers, to the Continental Army, to the patriots who served in the Army, and it tells the history of our country. It tells the history of the founding of our country, and it's a tribute and statement of patriotic and national identity. And you mentioned those windows. You mentioned those beautiful stained glass windows. They're red and blue, just like the national flag. Red and blue, red and blue.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
And they tell the story of the founding of America. There's a window about the American Revolution. There's a window about early settlement. There's a window about early discovery. And then there's a big window. The biggest window of all is the life story of George Washington. So the chapel really represents all sorts of things. It's, of course, a place of worship for all Americans, all Americans who make that pilgrimage to
Right,
Valley
right.
Forge Park.
And I was very much impressed too with the cemetery. You know,
Beautiful.
tell us about the cemetery. I went by there and I see that. I'm saying to myself, this Valley Forge means so much in the history of America. And my mom and pop both come from Italy, but they come here and they're so proud. They came here to make a better life for me, and I'm doing everything I can to make a better life for everybody later on that's going to enjoy this, what you're doing today. You will not be forgotten.
The churchyard is one of the beautiful parts of Washington Memorial Chapel. Many people say that, well, they have relatives buried in Valley Forge. Well, you're not buried in the park.
No.
At least you got to sneak in late at night if you're going to bury anybody in the park, because the park won't let you do that.
Right.
So if people are buried at the park, it's in the Washington Memorial Chapel churchyard. And the churchyard is open to people. I've had people ask me that, can people still be buried there? And yes, you can. We have grave plots. We
Great.
have a place for cremains. So it is a very, very vital part of who we are and what we do.
I was very impressed. I was invited by Tony Gorzinski, my right-hand man. And you had a Christmas time, you sang carols outside. And I says, well, they're going to in the church. I thought they're going to be inside. No, they were outside. I'm freezing.
Wasn't that cold that night?
And tell me about the organ. Tell me about the organ.
Well, what you experienced at that was our carillon. Washington Memorial Chapel has one of the finest carillons or bell systems.
What's that? What do you mean, Carol?
Well, carillon is a series of bells that are played like an organ or a piano by a human being.
Right.
And you hear the bells
What
played.
are the feast days? I'm sorry, Italians, we have the feast days and all. When they play that, I know they did it on Christmas time, Thanksgiving.
Well, yeah, all great services at the church. We usually begin and end with the carillon. Our carillioneer, Doug Geffert, is one of the finest carillioneers in the country. And whenever you hear the bells at Washington Memorial Chapel, it's not a machine. It's not a tape. Somebody is up in the tower playing it by hand. In the summer, we have carillon concerts every Wednesday evening. And we get hundreds of people to the campus who enjoy these concerts that are free to the public. And then before services, as I say, we always have the opportunity on Sunday afternoons. Doug often has carillon concerts.
When is your services?
Well, we gather for worship on Saturday evenings at 5 o'clock. And then we have...
Beautiful. Go have a dinner or so and get church.
Yeah. And then 2 services on Sunday, 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock service. Very simple service. And then 10 o'clock with the choir and the organ. And those are our opportunities for worship.
When I went in there, you're like in a different world. The light coming through, the different the glass windows, and then up top there's readings up there, and then when you walk, there's different things about history of some of the great men of this country who helped build this country. Now, which windows is your favorite? Aha.
Well, Gardiner knows the windows
from
well.
The audience, way up in the balcony.
Well, I think everybody loves the George Washington window, the big window in the back.
Oh, yeah.
That has all the little sections that tell the story of George Washington's life.
He went, in other words, he prayed before battle or anything, right?
Well, one of the stained glass images is Washington kneeling in prayer at Valley Forge, which is one of the traditions associated with Washington. Gardiner is the one that really knows the windows intimately.
Go ahead.
Well, I have 2 favorite windows apart from the Washington window. One is the window of the Revolution, which tells the story of the American Revolution. It was just recently restored thanks to a very generous donation by the color guard of the Pennsylvania Society, Sons of the Revolution. It's a blue window, and it's dedicated to John Paul Jones, and there's this beautiful blue sense of the sea on it, but it also tells the story of the American Revolution. And then the other window that I'm very fond of, and which is, I think, really pertinent today is the story of the Constitution. Essentially, the founding of the Constitution, the defense, the argument for the ratification of the Constitution, and then Washington's first term of office.
You know, I was so much impressed with the cemetery for some reason or other, you know, and
People are dying to get into that cemetery.
oh, you come up with a one-liner on me, huh? Okay, all right. There was a priest and a rabbi sitting ringside at a boxing match.
Shouldn't have started
Okay, and the one fighter was going like this, blessing himself before the fight, and the rabbi said to the priest, "Father, is that going to help him any blessing himself?" He says, "It ain't going to help him much if he don't know how to fight." So actually, prepare yourself for the fight. Now we're going to take a little break. We're going to come back with a left and right and a right and an uppercut. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this fundraising, you know, and it's such a great thing. This is for all Americans. It started with nickels and dimes, and now we're asking for help. So here is the engine behind the fundraising. Tell me who you are.
My name's Jason Griggs. I'm the chairman of the capital campaign for the Washington Memorial Chapel.
Okay, now, what do? Make phone calls, twist arms, what? Boom, bap, bop.
I do a lot of stuff like this. I come on shows with folks like you, and really just try our best to get our message out about what a beautiful place the Washington Memorial Chapel is and why it's worth saving.
You know, I think the schools should have more tours to have the children see that. I mean, I was there when my mother took me through there. She took me to all kind of churches. You know, so it's a wonder that we don't have more visitors like that. But I know that Valley Forge, Memorial, gets a lot of people come there and visit, you know. And tell me, some of the people that in the cemetery, who are some of the famous people right behind the chapel? Tell me.
Well, we have many people, both famous and not famous. We have, for example, Secretary Knox, who was the Secretary of State and Secretary of Treasury under Theodore Roosevelt, and under Taft. And then we have, of course, the founder, Burke. We have the hero of Flight 87, the man who helped bring down the
93.
airliner, Flight 93.
Flight 93.
Flight 93, the man who helped bring down the flight that was originally intended to go and crash into the Capitol, but in fact was brought down by a concerted effort of the crew back in 2001 on 9/11. So he's buried there. We have a number of generals. We have Alex of Alex's Lemonade Stand.
You know, it's impressive what I read on some of the tombstones. You know, just go there sometimes and just walk through there, and it brings back memories, and you hear and you read something about what these people were saying. It sort of brings history back, you know.
Well,
Let me tell you something about my visits to Valley Forge. You're supposed to do the talking, but I'm going to talk now. I went there, and I was so impressed with inside the chapel. I was so impressed with this. I guess you call it some kind of museum or something that tells the history about George Washington and all. It's great. Then in the back, there's a little gift shop, and they have hot dogs, and they have different good food. And let me tell you, and Valley Memorial Chapel right there, they have the cleanest toilets in the United States. Believe me, I was there. I said, "Oh no, this the wooden cabin." I said, "It's gonna what George Washington." You know, I look at, oh my God, everything was the cleanest toilets around. So I just want to tell you that I get in there, okay? That's real living. Now, how are we doing? Are we doing all right?
Just a one point. You mentioned the museum. The museum that was part of the Valley Forge Historical Society was founded by the founder of the chapel. It's no longer at the chapel. It is now part of the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia on 3rd and Chestnut Street. It's artifacts from the American Revolution, Washington's cups, a variety of things. They're all going to be on display at the Museum of the American Revolution when it opens on the 19th of April of 2017.
And Hank,
It could be-
if I may,
It's a coming event, right?
if I may, all lightheartedness aside about what's the hot dogs and everything else, but the Washington Memorial Chapel in Valley Forge is hallowed ground. It is dedicated to the sacrifice of Americans, both pre-Revolutionary War, during Revolutionary War, and ever since. And the Washington Memorial Chapel is truly, as Gardiner said earlier, is dedicated to their memory and it's certainly in need of preservation.
And I want to check my buddy. He's a walking encyclopedia. Stan Sorosky. I can't pronounce his Italian names, but this is the chapel. This is the chapel, and let me tell you, beautiful. This chapel needs help. It can't talk, but it comes from the heart. So please, make some donations. Let me make some phone calls. Hello, Corporations United States, send some money to Memorial Chapel in Valley Forge. Yeah, and they got any kind of funding? Yeah, the pastor will be there, welcome you. Yeah, and if you want, we'll have a little spaghetti and ravioli on the side if you want. Okay, thank you. There you are. We're going to go there. But there it is. It needs. Tell me what's the problem?
Well, over the years, there's been tremendous amount of water infiltration that's occurred at the chapel. The stone itself,
Yeah.
it's
Water, fire, and politicians will find their way.
they will find their way into just about everything. But the limestone is a soft stone, and over the years, the water, the wind, and the elements have found their way in and have deteriorated a lot of the carvings and the writings and other things that are engraved on the stones have completely washed them away, and perhaps gone forever. And we can't allow the rest of the chapel to go the same way. It is truly one of our nation's treasures and widely unknown, except to those who come to Valley Forge. But as was mentioned before, most of the people who come through the chapel, they feel that it's part of the national park, and the national park should be keeping it up, and they really should be keeping it up because most of our visitors come from them. But it's truly something that we receive no support, financial support. We're supported by the Valley, by the
nothing
park.
coming from Washington or anything.
The Park Service supports us with their words and the things they do, but for the financial support is certainly not coming from our national government or state government. It comes really from the donations of the American people, the people who are congregants at the chapel, and patrons and friends of the Washington Memorial Heritage.
Yeah, well, let me say this. Patriotic Sons of America, they have a flyer, they have what do you call it, newsletter. And I was very much impressed with the very end here. There's so many things about it. It's over 100 years old. The Washington Memorial was built by and for all Americans. And I like this last sentence here. Your donations will do more than just repair stones and mortar. It will enable those very stones to continue to stand as a memorial to American first president, George Washington, and to inspire generations to come. Please help us accomplish this task. I think that is something that's, like I said before, can't talk, but we'll talk for it, okay? And we got our pastor up front, he's on the left and the right. He's going to cause a knockout here. We're going to reach our goal. Now, tell me a little bit more about you are a historian. I enjoyed it. It's always best to know something about. When first time I went to Italy, I didn't know about this building, that building. The next time I went with somebody and say, see that building? That was done by the Greeks. This here was by the Romans, So you learn something when you go there. So what we're doing, educating people to go there.
Let me tell you two things before we go back to the fundraising. In 1932, which was 29 years after the chapel was founded, the founder said, Washington Memorial Chapel is Valley Forge. There no American is an alien. There all differences are forgotten, and Jew and Gentile, Roman Catholic and Protestant can worship side by side. Now that's one thing. And then the second thing that's very important to know about the chapel is that there's a tremendous amount of craftsmanship and artwork. You've noticed the windows.
Yeah.
Jason commented about the stone.
Inspiring.
It's all done by Americans, all of whom were born in some other country. Those windows were done by a man named Nicola d'Ascenzo. Where do you think he was born?
Like Gumbadi.
Exactly.
Hey,
It was-
Gumbadi, si Watsanati. All nationalities. That's what I like about it.
He was
The
born in
birthday.
Italy. And the iron work, the bronze and brass work was done by a Polish immigrant.
Yeah.
And the woodwork was done by a Belgian immigrant. And then most of the stonework was in turn done by Italian immigrants. So it's all done by Americans. It's beautiful craftsmanship,
Yeah.
but they're all born somewhere else.
Right. You know, I just want to mention something to the audience. Go to the chapel and just stay there. And I never got a feeling of being someplace else, and yet I was there. The way the light comes in, the chapel, the signs, what's written on the floor, what's on the ceiling, it just puts you in another, I don't know, atmosphere. I don't know if you want to call it atmosphere, whatever it is.
You can feel the beauty, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So here it is. This thing started with people, nickels and dimes, and they didn't have front-end loaders. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. They did it with their hands, of all nationalities. My Goomba came all the way from Italy to come over there and do the windows a little bit. So I was so much impressed. So where do we send the money?
Well, it's we
start
do
with
have
how
a
much
we
we
do have
I
a
think we're going to put it on the screen where
Yeah.
to send it all.
donations can be accepted at SaveWashingtonMemorial.org. We have a website set up where we can accept donations. But let me just talk for a moment, if I could, please, about the scope and what all we're trying to accomplish. Our total campaign, it's a $4.5 million capital campaign.
Yeah.
So lots of nickels, lots of dimes, but it's $4.5 million, and that will completely preserve and protect the envelope of the chapel. It'll replace roofs. It will replace mortar. It'll repair stone. It'll repair glass, and preserve it for the next 100 years.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of deferred maintenance that has not been done over the past couple of decades, and that has led to the severity of the need right now for the $4.5 million. The chapel and an early group of donors, we were able to, by the middle of June of 2016, we were able to raise $500,000 from just a small group of congregants and close friends of the chapel, and we're in the final stages of doing our congregational asks within the folks who go to the chapel every Sunday, and also our close friends, and we're looking to wrap that next phase up. At the same time, we're beginning to ramp up our external asks of foundations, philanthropists, and corporations, and other lineage and
Corporations
historical
like what?
historical
Like,
groups.
AT&T and
I would love AT&T to cut us a check for $5 million bucks.
Wow.
Wow.
They have a special little thing.
We would
Wow.
we would love anyone who is a lover of American history and a lover of the sacrifices that have gone into making our country what it is today, who are moved to give us a donation. I would love for them to see us as something that was worthwhile for their
I made
for
a
their
call
money.
to the building and trade, wait for call back, and they can be helpful, you know.
Everyone can be
They
helpful.
can come up with help with labor, they can help with material or something, you know, and they would love it. I know that when Mother Teresa came to Norristown, I was helping out a little bit, and they took over the convent next to St. Patrick's Church. Oh my God, the building was empty for four or 5 years, and there were about 15 coats of wallpaper on the wall, and I got the building and trade guys to come here and scrape the thing, and painting, plumbing, and this and that. And the union, they said, if you volunteer every Saturday to help out, then when a job comes, you were first call. It's okay. So this guy was painting Saturday, and I come walking and say, hey, Cisco, yeah, he got me working here. He says, I could be down a track. You know, I said, come on, do it for Mother Teresa. You know, you get a blessing and all. You know, and get and so finally, every Saturday he was complaining every Saturday. So done is done. I was down Lou's sandwich shop. He's down there eating a sandwich. Hey, Cisco, he says, does Mother Teresa need any more volunteer work up there? I says, no, it's all finished now. He says, I want to do some help. I says, why? He says, because after I start doing all that volunteer work, he says, I went to the track. He says, I won 5 races out of 7. He says, and then I got a letter where I got $200 I was waiting for 3 months. Then I found a wallet. It was $200 in it. I called the man. He told me, you keep the $200 and you paint my house. He says, all these good things are happening. I want to do something for Mother Teresa. So now let's do something for the chapel, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
God. You know, how much do you get paid to do this job?
Nothing.
Oh, you get paid weekly, very weekly, right? Right. Well, I'll tell you, that's what it comes from the heart.
We're all volunteers.
You will be rewarded.
We
You
hope.
too.
We certainly hope so. We hope.
Pastor we had here,
We certainly hope that everyone who decides to help us out with this worthy cause is somehow blessed with good fortune. They're certainly going to be blessed with a beautiful new and preserved building over there in Valley Forge for the next century, and it'll stand obviously as a testament to the sacrifice of those who've come before.
it's sort of an educational thing too, right?
Oh, very much so. We have, I would say we have about 40 or 50,000 visitors per year who come through, people who are touring Valley Forge Park. And we have docents, tour guides available by appointment, and sometimes actually there, whether there's an appointment or not. And we have school bus tours, we have people of all, we have many veterans who come with a group of, a reunion for a ship or a unit.
Yeah.
And we tell them the story of not only the chapel, but also what the chapel represents, the message about America, about the sacrifices, about everything that went into building our country as well as building the chapel. People find it very interesting. You know, I would add regarding the money that it's very important. People should know that any money that comes in is put into very segregated accounts. This account, there's an account, if you don't like the idea of giving to a religious organization, you can give to the Heritage, which is the secular one. And we have, and so, if you're getting a matching gift, for example, from your employer, and the employer doesn't like the words chapel, you can give to the Washington Memorial Heritage, and that money will go into a specific account set aside for chapel restoration, bricks and mortar only. And the same for the chapel. If you do like to give to the chapel, that money goes to specific fund, bricks and mortar restoration fund. It doesn't go to anything else.
I got another from the balcony. This is from Stan. Are there any strange or funny stories in the history of the chapel? I like that. A little,
Oh my God.
being religious means being happy. You don't have to be sad. You say, well, the preacher was always to be happy. Go ahead. Is that some kind of funny story? I know I got hit you last minute like this.
Well, that's what questions from the audience are all about. Funny stories. I haven't laughed recently. we,
This one's on you.
that's hard. You know, the only stories that we have are, I think, inspiring stories. I will say that a story that I see periodically is perhaps not funny, but a case of tears. We have visitors that come in. I've had several French visitors who come in. And when I tell them about the fact that the chapel also remembers the contribution of the French to American independence, French, during the American Revolution, I've had people cry. Actually, French citizens cry and say, you know, this is wonderful. It's so wonderful that America remembers what France did.
Yeah.
And again, I would say many people who come into the chapel are moved, deeply moved by the message, by the feeling of peace, by the entire religious and spiritual atmosphere there.
You know, and if certainly not a strange story, and it's exactly what Gardiner just talked about. Is, you know, I'll tell you my story. You know, my story was back in 2011, and I was and something was missing in my life. I didn't know what it was, and I had driven by the chapel 100 times in my life, 1,000 times in my life, and never really gave it much thought.
Right.
And I caught my eye, and I pulled in. It was a few days before Christmas in 2011, and the chapel was, you know, some of the volunteers were in there. They were setting out the poinsettia and putting up the pine boughs and the other things that really make the chapel one of the most beautiful places at Christmas time you could ever imagine. And I walked in, and I had this immense sense of peace. And ever since, I knew that the chapel was a special place. It would always hold a special meaning for me, and it was my new church home.
Well, let me say, I think two things. I'm going to put my ideas. Put a box out there, drive-in donation, okay? Put a little envelope with a little wish, like they do it in Italy, okay? Every time you go in a new church, make a wish. I'll make a wish, I'll give a donation and put it in there. One other thing, a lot of veterans are buried in there, right?
Right.
So that's the connection with the United States. Army, Navy, Marines. Norristown needed help to build a dam because we're always getting flooded. Mm-hmm. They called in the National Guard, and the National Guard built the thing. So, if Washington don't want to give no money, Harrisburg don't get the National Guard to come over and help keep this chapel alive.
Well,
and they can do some work. I don't know. Maybe they can clean the cemetery. Maybe they can build a nice little altar to do something. Get the people involved.
Well, you're right. And we have a Veterans Wall of Honor, actually, in the right near the bell tower. And on that Wall of Honor, there are bronze plaques that list the names of every individual who has served in the United States military. Obviously not every that is served, but if you had a relative who has served at some point, or an ancestor who served in the American Army or Navy or Marines or Air Force, you can have their name put there.
Oh, that's great.
And then we have a dedication service.
All right, one thing.
Oh.
What other annual events happen at the chapel?
Oh,
a couple fast ones. Boom,
okay.
boom,
Well,
boom.
we have we have a very important event on the first Sunday in May.
I love that.
French Alliance Day, where we commemorate the Treaty of Alliance between France and the United States that was signed in Paris in 1778. And we invite a military representative from the French embassy, and he makes a speech and talks about the perpetual friendship between France and America, and then he lays a wreath on a memorial across the street in honor of the French and American soldiers and sailors who died during the American Revolution. And this past year, we also dedicated the wreath to those who had been the victims of terrorism in France last year, and unfortunately this year as well. We have a regular Thanksgiving Day service called Kirchen of the Tartan, which celebrates...
Turkey?
No, we don't have turkey.
Manja,
It's a
manja,
religious.
manja.
It's a religious service, not an eating service. And we celebrate the Scots' contribution to the settlement of America. So it celebrates the Tartans of Scotland. And
You know, you mentioned about the French. I have something in common with the French. They say cheese the same as Italians, fromage.
that's right. That's right. And our reception afterwards always features French cheese. So you'll be welcome.
A couple of the other events that were mentioned that we have every year is, and Father Roy mentioned them earlier, was the Carillon concert series that happens during the summertime every Wednesday night. You can come and sit on the lawn with and listen to the bells and the Carillon be played. And then we had an evensong ceremony back on 9/11, in which we again dedicated to those who had given their lives for our country.
And of course, we also have what are called state services, which are services generally by the representatives from the Daughters of the American Revolution or other patriotic organizations, Patriotic Order, Sons of America, various Sundays throughout the year commemorating and celebrating the sacrifices of various patriots. So.
Well, our half hour is over, and it's all about the chapel.
Could I just say one
Go
more?
ahead,
Just
go
one
ahead.
more.
30 seconds. Go ahead. hit it.
Just one more time. A place where that you can make your donations is SaveWashingtonMemorial.org, and there's a lot of great information on that website. We encourage everyone to come there, come to the chapel, come for a tour, go to the website, make a donation, help us out. It's absolutely a beautiful place.
I would just add that if you want to get married there,
That's right.
we are open to marriages by all faiths. So
Right.
it's a beautiful place, and it deserves the support of the American people.
The church. You want to go get married, got a funeral, that's what the church is all about. Church is where God is. Now, if you want to believe it, okay, I believe it. You don't believe it, that's your fault, not my fault. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing me, us, Pastor, everybody to come into your home, and please be kind, be happy, and help the chapel. In a chapel in the moonlight. I think there's only one way to close it. We said this is all about all Americans. So, God bless America,
land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her
through the night with the light from above,
from the mountains
to the prairies, to the oceans,
white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless the chapel.
Thank you, Hank.
Thanks,
Thank
Hank.
you, everybody. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. Adios. May God bless each and every one of you. All right.